My father and my brother were the ones to identify Casey's body when it happened. And following that, my brother had a complete mental breakdown. And my father drank himself to death. It was more than either one of them could process, seeing Casey's little body in the way he left it.
Hello, guys. Oh, I hate that word. It's just a reaction. But welcome to Nana's Angels. Once again, if you're new, I'm glad you stopped by to check us out. If you're returning, which a lot of you are, thank you for always coming back. Thank you for feeling comfortable. Thank you for just being here to support the channel. The reason I'm doing this story is because we're constantly seeing this happen to this child and this happened to that child. And we're hardly ever seeing justice for these children, for these babies, for these victims. I ran across this morning and it was one that was put out. It was a video that was put out 7 days ago. It was on August the 1st that it happened. The execution, that is. This is a story about Cassie Williamson. Her real name, her full name was Cassandra Lynn Williamson, but they called her Cass. And on July the 25th of 2002, a 24-year-old family friend, literally right under the mom and dad's nose. I mean, like the dad got up, saw the child, saw this man, standing in the same room, which they were supposed to be there, standing in the same room with her. He went to the restroom. The dad went to the restroom. When he comes back out, the 24-year-old had took off with this little 6-year-old angel. And that was the last time the dad ever saw her. That was the last time anyone ever saw her. Now, 3 years later, he was convicted. But yet it took 20 years, guys, 20 years for this little angel and her family to actually get justice for what he did to this baby. Let me read you the story, and then I'm going to read to you the conviction, the decision, what happened the day that they put an end to his the horrible nightmare of his life. Listen up, guys. Valley Park, Missouri. Cassandra Cassie Williamson should be turning 27 this year. Sadly, whatever hopes or dreams Cassie and her family may have had for her life were cruelly snatched away nearly 20 years ago. One man, described as a family acquaintance, robbed Cassie Williamson's family of all she could ever be. Family and neighbors described Cassie, a kindergartner at Valley Park Elementary School, as a happy girl with a bright smile who loved riding her bicycle and singing. She and her family were staying at a friend's house on Thursday, July the 25th, 2002, located across the street from their own home. The following morning, Cassie's father, Ernie Williamson, woke before 7 a.m. to see his daughter standing in the living room with then 24-year-old Johnny Johnson, who also spent the night at the residence. When Ernie came back from the restroom, both Cassie and Johnny were gone. Ernie and Angie Williamson, Cassie's parents, contacted police to report their daughter missing. Johnny Johnson's mugshot at the time of his arrest in July of 2002. St. Louis County Police, members of the FBI, and scores of volunteers, nearly 100 people in all, spent the next several hours combing the nearby woods along with Merrimack River in a desperate search. People who lived in the area reported seeing Johnson carrying the 6-year-old in his arms. She still had on her nightgown. Sometime after Cassie had been reported missing, 2 county police officers located Johnny Johnson walking down the street near the home where everyone had been staying. According to then St. Louis County Police Chief Ron Battelle, Johnson was soaking wet. Police took Johnson into custody as the search continued. The body of 6-year-old Cassie Williamson was discovered inside this pit at the site of the old glass factory in Valley Park. Around 3 p.m., authorities ended the search and asked the volunteers to leave the woods. One of the volunteers had been searching the site of the old St. Louis Plate Glass Company when they found Cassie's body in a pit less than a mile away from her home. She had been buried beneath large rocks and debris. For the Williamsons, worry and heartache gave way, devastation and grief. Around the same time, Johnson, who spent the last several hours denying to have had any contact with Cassie, suddenly told police where to find her. He claimed Cassie had died in an accident and that he buried her. Investigators determined Cassie had died as a result of blunt force trauma, likely from being struck by rocks, and did not believe Johnny's story. Johnson told police detective that he had exposed himself and only unalived Cassie after they both started freaking out. But later that evening, Johnson's story again changed. Police said he admitted to kidnapping Cassie with the intention of R-ing her and unaliving her. They determined he went to Merrimack River to clean himself off after the crime. Johnson was then charged with first-degree unaliving, armed criminal action, kidnapping, and attempted forcible R. Casey Williamson was laid to rest following a service at Twin Oak Presbyterian Church. In the aftermath of Casey's funeral at Twin Oaks Presbyterian Church, the community embraced the Williamsons to offer comfort and support. Strangers attended the funeral and contributed to memorials outside the Williamson home. Out of respect and compassion, the family found some respite from their sorrow reading condolence letters. When the time came for trial years later, Johnson's public defense attorney claimed he had a diminished mental capacity and suffered schizophrenia, which drove him to unalive the girl. A recent mugshot of Johnny Johnson, Missouri Department of Corrections. The story did not sway jurors, who convicted Johnson on all counts on March 7, 2005. A judge sentenced Johnson to the death penalty for the murder conviction and consecutive life sentences for the other crimes. Johnny Johnson remains on death row at Potosi Correctional Facility in Mineral Point, Missouri, following a 2012 attempt to overturn that sentence. The site of the old glass factory was cleared to make way for the Merrimack Valley River Basin levee. The levee was completed in 2006. The Williamson family established a scholarship fund for kids in Valley Park as a way to honor Cassie's memory. The family also organized the annual Valley Park Safety Fair as a way to honor Cassie's life and empower parents and children with knowledge to protect themselves. Cassie was such a beautiful and joyful child that she deserves to be remembered for good things and not just for the horrible thing that happened to her. Della Steele, Cassie's great aunt, said in 2017. Missouri man executed for the 2002 abduction, unaliving of a 6-year-old girl lured to an abandoned factory. Bonne Terre, Missouri. A man who abducted a 6-year-old Missouri girl and beat her to unalive at an abandoned factory 2 decades ago was put to death Tuesday evening shortly after the U.S. Supreme Court rejected a request to block the execution over arguments he was mentally incompetent. Johnny Johnson, 45, received a lethal injection dose of phenobarbital at a state prison in Bonne Terre and was pronounced unalive at 6:33 p.m. CDT. Authorities said he was convicted of the July 2002 unaliving of Cassie Williamson in the St. Louis area suburb of Valley Park. Johnson, who had schizophrenia, expressed remorse in a brief handwritten statement released by the Department of Corrections hours before being executed. God bless. Sorry to the people and family I hurt, Johnson's statement said. As he lay on his back with a sheet up to his neck, Johnson turned his head to the left, appearing to listen to his spiritual advisor shortly before the injection began. He then faced forward with his eyes closed, with no further physical reaction. Among those witnessing Johnson's execution were several members of the girl's family and the former prosecutor and police investigator who handled this case. The U.S. Supreme Court, with Justice Sonia Sotomayor and 2 other justices dissenting, rejected a late request to stay the execution. In recent appeals, Johnson's attorney had said the inmate has had delusions about the devil using his death to bring about the end of the world. The court today paves the way to execute a man with documented mental illness before any court meaningfully investigates his competency to be executed. Sotomayor and the other dissenting justices wrote in a statement when his stay was rejected. There is no moral victory in executing someone who believes Satan is killing him to bring about the end of the world. Former St. Louis County Prosecutor Bob McCullough called the delusions nonsense and said Johnson inflicted unspeakable horrors upon Cassie. He's got some issues, significant issues, McCullough said moments before witnessing the execution, but he knew exactly what he was doing. The girl's disappearance from her hometown of Valley Park on July 26, 2002, had set off a frantic search before her body was found. Cassie's mother had been best friends in childhood with Johnson's older sister and even helped babysit him. After Johnson attended a barbecue the night before the unaliving, Cassie's family let him sleep on a couch in the home where they were sleeping over. In the morning, Johnson lured the girl, still in her nightgown, to the abandoned glass factory, even carrying her on his shoulders on the walk to the dilapidated site, according to court documents. When he tried to assault her, Cassie screamed and tried to break free. He unalived her with a brick and a large rock, then washed off in a nearby Merrimack River. Johnson confessed that same day to the crime, according to the authorities. It was the most violent and brutal than any case I've ever seen, said former St. Louis County homicide investigator Paul Nesky, who questioned Johnson at length on the day Cassie's unaliving and witnessed his execution. After a search by first responders and volunteers, Cassie's body was found in a pit buried under rocks and debris less than a mile from her home. At Johnson's trial, defense lawyers presented testimony showing their client, an ex-convict who had been released from a state psychiatric facility 6 months before the crime, had stopped taking his schizophrenia medication and was acting strangely in the days before the slaying. In June, the Missouri Supreme Court denied an appeal seeking to block the execution on arguments that Johnson's schizophrenia prevented him from understanding the link between his crime and the punishment. A three-judge federal appeals court panel last week temporarily halted execution plans, but the full 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals reinstated it. Johnson's attorney then filed appeals to the U.S. Supreme Court, centered around his competency to be executed. Governor Mike Parson on Monday denied a request to reduce Johnson's sentence to life in prison. The clemency petition by Johnson's attorneys said Cassie's father, Eric Williamson, opposed the death penalty. But Cassie's great-aunt, Della Steele, wrote an emotional plea to the governor, urging the execution be carried out too. Send the message that it is not okay to terrorize, unalive a child. Steele said grief from Cassie's death led to destructive effects among other family members. He did something horrible. He took a life away from a completely innocent child, and there have to be consequences for that, Steele said, recently speaking with the Associated Press. The family has organized community safety fairs in Cassie's memory, including a July 22nd event that drew a couple hundred people. The family gave away dozens of child identification kits along with safety tips involving fire, water, and bicycles, among other items. The execution was the 16th in the U.S. this year, including 3 previously in Missouri, 5 in Texas, and 4 in Florida, 2 in Oklahoma, and 1 in Alabama. It's been a difficult day and a difficult 21 years, Steele said in a statement after witnessing the execution. We will continue to honor our sweet Cassie's memory by doing our best to make a difference in the lives of other children. In remembrance of Cassandra Lynn, Cassie Williamson. The radiance which once was so bright is now forever taken from our sight. Through nothing can bring back the time of sparkling in her eyes, of glowing in her smile, We will go on in the rest of times, remembering a shining face who lives in our hearts with love and grace. Rest in the arms of angels, sweetheart.